My name is Caesar. If you guys don't know who I am, then I'm really excited to have you all here this morning. And if you are here after attending our Easter service, we're really glad that you've decided to come back. And if this is your first time with us, welcome. My name is Caesar, and I have the privilege of being the lead pastor here at King's Cross Church. But whether this is your first time or your 10th time or your 12th time, you've actually chosen a really good time to come to King's Cross this morning because we're launching a new sermon series, a collection of conversations, if you will, concerning the Gospel of John. And we'll break up this Gospel. It's pretty long. It's like 20, 21 chapters. And so we're going to break up this book into chunks over the course of the next year. And so what we'll do is we'll weave in and out of the Gospel of John so we can still address other topics and themes that are going to be healthy and good for the health of this church. Now, the reason why we've chosen to go through the Gospel of John is because of the unique way in which John tells the life of Jesus. Every gospel story you author, every gospel you read, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they all retell the life of Jesus from different vantage points and different goals in mind. Now, John makes his goal very clear which is really interesting. At the very end of the gospel, he says this in John chapter 20, verse 31, when he says that he's written this gospel so that everyone who would read it may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. And this is what makes the Gospel of John quite unique, because you get to see not only who Jesus is, but you get to see Jesus' heart towards humanity. Now, this is very crucial for us today because there are so many differing views of who Jesus is and who Jesus is not. Both Christians and non-believers alike are wrestling with the identity of who Jesus is in our day and age. And in the midst of the conversations, Jesus becomes nothing more than what seems like a set of ideas, a philosophical treatise, or just another way of life. But what John does in this gospel is that he helps us wrestle and interact not with an idea, with a God out there, but with a person named Jesus whose heart has drawn near towards humanity. He's wanting us to wrestle not with an idea, but with a person named Jesus. And so this sermon series through the Gospel of John, we've titled it, Seeing Jesus. And so we're going to be seeing Jesus through the lens of the Gospel of John. Now this morning, we're going to just cover the first 13 verses, John chapter 1, verses 1 through 13. And this section of John is called the prologue. It's kind of like, have you ever seen Star Wars? When the titles come down, in a galaxy very far away, right? And it kind of gives you this background. This is what John is doing. He's being Star Wars for us. He's giving us a bird's eye view of all the things that he's about to unpack over the course of the gospel story. And so actually the prologue is 18 verses, and it's very dense. So we're actually going to break it up into this week and next week. So we're not going to cover everything. We're going to cover everything we read, but we're not covering the whole prologue this morning. Now, unlike the other Gospels that quickly move into the story of Jesus, John doesn't start off with saying what Jesus has done, but instead starts with saying who Jesus is. Now, the prologue is one of the clearest and most robust descriptions of the person and work of Jesus. But it's curious, why would John start this way? If you read a memoir or a biography of someone, you want to read about all the things they've done. Right? If you've read this, a biography of Steve Jobs or of George Washington, you're not really concerned about the backdrop. You want to know, how did he get to where he got? What did he do to be George Washington? How did Steve Jobs create Apple? How did he think about the first iPhone? You want to think about all those things, but John doesn't start that way. He starts beginning with who Jesus is. You see, the reason why he starts this way is because the people that he's writing to, both Jews and Gentiles, meaning religious people and secular people, they alike were all being persecuted for their faith in Jesus. They were being killed, kicked out of the cities, excommunicated from their families because they were disciples of Jesus, and they're left wondering, is Jesus worth following? Anyone ever have that feeling before? Like after a really rough season, a really tough week, a really rough day, maybe you've asked the question, is Jesus worth it? Because I thought following Jesus meant that my life was going to be easier. So why does it seem like my life is just as hard, if not harder, after following Jesus? Now, I just want you to know, if you've ever asked that question, there is no shame in that. There is no sin in asking that question, but we do need an answer. We do need an answer. Because I just need you to know this morning, following Jesus is not easy. Following Jesus is actually quite costly. And what we do in the church is that we offer a very easy version of Jesus, a very palatable Jesus, the one who's just your friend, the one who just wants you to have a good life. A Jesus that requires nothing of you, costs nothing, requires you not to change anything that you are, to obey nothing that he said. It's only when you feel like it. A life that allows you to add him to the myriad of things that you add to your life. You know, you can be a Christian these days just simply by having a little cross emoji on your Instagram bio. Is that how we mark a Christian? Is this actually what makes any of us followers of Jesus? Just wearing a cross or just putting an emoji, putting John 3:16 under our eyes like Tim Tebow? Is that actually what makes us a Christian? You see, if that's all it is, then let me just tell you, when life gets really hard, when life comes crumbling down, your faith has no anchor. A Jesus that is easy to follow is a Jesus easy to forget and leave behind. There is no grit or sense of resilience to the person of Jesus, who is just merely a man who you can accept or reject whenever you feel like it. But still, the question is Jesus worth following in the difficulty of this life? Is it worth attaching yourself to him? John's answer this morning is a resounding yes. Of course, Jesus is worth it all. But he answers this not by just saying that. He answers that by showing us who Jesus is and why he's worth following. Because if we don't have an accurate view of who Jesus is, then we'll just jump ship at the next moment, the next thing that we think will save us. So this morning, John provides us with a front row view to who Jesus is. So with the remainder of our time together, we're just going to answer these two questions. Who is Jesus, and why should I follow him? Let's open up our Bibles together. You should have maybe the scripture journal in front of you. We're just going to read the first verse right now. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Well, that's a pretty big claim. These are very big claims to make. The first question I'd be having is like, who is this Word? Because you're telling me this Word, whoever or whatever this Word is in the beginning, meaning the beginning of humanity. So this thing has existed throughout all time. And that this Word was with God. Now, listen, this is if you even believe in God, but if you do believe in God, you got to think, man, like he's up there in the heavens. But more than that, he says this Word was God. Now, as you read the totality of John's prologue, it becomes very clear that this Word is Jesus. The verse is really better read as, in the beginning was Jesus, and Jesus was with God, and Jesus was God. So not, like John, why would you be so confusing, buddy? Like, why would you not just say that? Just put Jesus in, put him in there. You don't have to keep people guessing. You keep people in suspense. They're gonna freak when they find out the word's Jesus. What, John? What are you doing? See, the reason why he's doing this is because the word that's being used for the word is the word logos. It's a Greek word. And this word held a lot of weight for the original groups that John was writing to. Now remember, John is writing to both Jews and Gentiles, non-Jews. And this would be the equivalent of writing to the religious and the secular world of our day. Now both of these groups had an image in their mind of what the word logos meant, and John wants us to attribute that to Jesus. So now, I'm just going to give you a brief example of this. Go back. Don't do that. Don't jump in ahead. If I were to tell you, it's pretty brick outside, what do you think I'm talking about? Do you think I mean there's bricks falling outside? No. Now, I'm from New York City, so this is a pretty common thing to say. It's brick outside, it's cold outside. Why it's bricks, I don't know. It's just brick outside. Or if you played basketball on the street, and if you were like me and got air balls, you know what they would say? This boy's shooting bricks. Why? I don't know. I guess it's because it's so heavy. I miss, I don't know. But you see, each word that we have here is based on the context and what it means to people. For you here in Florida, you're thinking, the only bricks I know are in homes. I don't know why anyone would say it's brick outside. Nothing about a brick means cold. But for me in New York, that's exactly what it would mean. So now this word logos has some cultural meaning for both Jew and Gentile, for Greeks and Jews. Now, for the Greeks, here's what the word logos meant. The word logos was the divine force that brings unity and order to the cosmos, or to the world. See, the Greeks were obsessed with trying to figure out the questions of why are things the way they are? Why is the sky blue? Why are trees green? Why do people suck? Why do children, this is the questions that they're asking. Why are people the way they are? Why is death here? Why is life like this? So they're asking all these questions of why, and the logos was the answer to all of those things. It's the logos that brings order and unity to life. But for the Jews, it was a little different. For the Jews, the word logos would have made them think back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, back to the creation story. Before you see, the word was the creative power that brings about life. Look what Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 says. It'll be in the screen, but you might just know it by offhand. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So this word, this logos, is the creative power of God. And so if you were to ask the Jews, why are things the way they are? Why is life the way it is? What brings order and unity to the world and to this life? Their answer would be, well, God, because he created all things. So now you take these two things and now attribute it to Jesus. What John is saying is that everyone that is reading this is that Jesus is the central unifying power and force in the entire universe. That everything in life finds its meaning and purpose through Jesus. But that's a pretty huge claim to make. Because wasn't Jesus just like a Palestinian Jew? A brown guy, a Jewish carpenter who loved the oppressed and challenged the religious of his time? Wasn't Jesus just a wise teacher and at best just a really great religious figure? Isn't this who Jesus is? And this is what people were saying about Jesus during the time of John. And in fact, that's how many people talk about Jesus today. He's just another man. But John says no. Jesus is far more than just a mere mortal. Jesus is God. He's more than another way of life, another religious mantra, another philosophy and ideology. Jesus is God. That's why at the end of John 1:1, he says, the Word was what? Was God. Who's the Word? Jesus. And if Jesus is God, it means what? He's God. That's just what it means. You see, Jesus is more than just another prophet or teacher or religious figure. Jesus is God, and this sets him apart from any other logos, from any other unifying principle that we use in this world. So when John calls Jesus the logos, he's saying that everything in this life and in this world is meant to be centered on Jesus. Why? Because Jesus is God. See, for centuries, people have tried to downplay the divinity of Jesus. No one really has a problem with Jesus up until he says, I'm God. In fact, Jesus died because of this claim. He would talk to the Jews and say, hey guys, remember the God you've been looking for? I'm here. And it got him killed. And do you know why in our world we have such an issue with Jesus being God? It's because if Jesus is actually God, then he holds supreme authority in our lives. That his teachings and his way of life and that every word he said was actually true and that we would have to submit to it. It means that we can't pick and choose what parts of Jesus' teachings we feel like obeying. For John to say that Jesus is God, what he's really doing is challenging us to not follow Jesus casually. That if everything that he's saying is true, then we have to submit all our life to Jesus. So I ask you this morning, what parts of your life are you treating Jesus as optional instead of central? Is it your sexuality? Is it your children? Is it your work ethic? Where is it in your life where you think, Jesus doesn't need control of this? Where in our lives do we play fast and loose with the teachings of Jesus? You see, Jesus is meant to be the central point of reference for our lives and the primary voice of direction. If we forget that Jesus is God, then he will be relegated to just another podcast that we listen to. He'll just sit in a row next to Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk and Huberman and Jordan Peterson, and then finally, when you have time, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. No, he does not share that voice with anyone else. He is the Word, God himself. And then John continues the narrative by showing us why that's actually a really great thing. Look what he says in verse 2. Jesus, he was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness shall not overcome it. And so he's here in the beginning. Jesus was God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing has been made. And what he's wanting us to do is he wants us to read this section of John through the lens of Genesis 1. So I'm going to bring us back to Genesis 1 more time. I'm going to give a little bit more context. Nope, there's another one that has all 3 verses. There we go. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Now, when you read this passage in Genesis 1 and the passage we just read in John 1, what we see here very clearly is that Jesus is the agent of creation. When God spoke, what it says, it just was. Now, when you speak, what do you create? Words. And what did and who is the Word? We just discovered this together. Jesus. So that means that everything that is created, that's why verse 3, everything that has been made is made by whom? By Jesus. Jesus is the one who carries out creation. He is the creative power at work. And what this shows us is that all of humanity finds its origin in Jesus. He actually created you. He created all things that are in here. I love what Psalm 139 says here. It'll be on the screen. Psalm 139 says, "For you," meaning God, Jesus, "created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." Can you sense the intimacy and the closeness captured in this psalm? That Jesus knitted you together in your mother's womb, that he saw you when no one else, like he doesn't need a sonogram. This guy has x-ray vision. He sees you before you're even a thing. He's seen all the days of your life before you've even lived one day of your life. He's seen it all. And I love what the Hebrew says. It says, you have been fearfully made. It's not that you're terrifying or ugly. And so no. Fearfully means awesomely. Have you ever really thought of yourself as, I'm awesomely made? And not like in a narcissistic way where you want everyone to worship you, but many of us in this room are constantly fighting under the weight of, man, I'm actually quite worthless. I screw up all the time. I'm a mess up. Even for those of you who are good looking, you're going to age and everything sags. Your days are numbered, right? Like this is, we don't feel awesomely made. No, but Jesus challenges that and says, no, but you are, because I made you. See, creation is an act of love of Jesus. Today, this morning, you can choose to believe that you're a clump of cells that magically came together, but then you'd be denying the inexpressible love of Jesus that he has directed towards you by creating you with his loving hands. But looking back to Genesis 1, I want us to notice the context in which Jesus created the universe. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. This world, this universe that is being referenced here in the very beginning in Genesis is a world of chaos and disorder. And in a second, he says, let there be light. And there was light. It just was. In just a moment, in a world of chaos and brokenness, Jesus brings light and life to a chaotic world. God said, let there be light, and then Jesus made it happen. And this is why John says in John chapter 1, verse 4 and 5, look what he says here. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness shall not overcome it. See, Jesus is not just the creator, but he is the very source of life. In him was life. Jesus' description of Jesus here is meant to be such a comfort for you this morning. In him is life. Not relationships, not work, not children, not marriage, not a 6-figure salary, not a life plan, not a mood board. None of those things actually can give you life. Because let's be honest for just a moment. Any of those things that you accredit life to can be taken from you in a moment. Anyone ever been broken up with before? Anyone break up with someone before? You were like, no one's breaking up with me. I break up with them. Anyone been fired? Anyone been like, you can't fire me? I quit, right? Like these things that we attribute life to are so temporary and fickle and fragile at best. And so let me ask you, are those the things you want to tie yourselves to? Because your life, your experience, that's real. That's tangible. When you hold your child at night, do you look at your child and think, man, I really hope my job works out because otherwise I fail as a parent? When you're in the hospital, when you receive a diagnosis, you don't look to your job and think, man, I really hope it can get me out of this thing. You can't even, like when your life is just falling apart, which, man, come on. It happens all the time. For me, it's daily because I'm just dramatic. Everything feels like it's falling apart half the time. You know, I've hit the age, at this point, I'm turning 31 this year. I played pickleball for 3 hours, and the next morning I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 80. I feel like 80 and elderly. I didn't even know my back hurt that bad. And when it's that bad, like my wife can try to give me a massage all she wants, but she can't make it feel better. Everything in this life that we think can give us life cannot. Relationships end, children go wayward, spouses fail us, jobs end, even your life has an expiration date. So why are these words comforting to us? What does verse 5 say about this life that is light? The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Because there has never been, this is comforting, because there has never been a darkness or chaos large enough to overcome the life that is Jesus. Or have we forgotten that we actually serve a resurrected Jesus upon which death has no result on him? Jesus actually has a PhD in life. This is what he does. And so when John says that in Jesus there is life, he's making it clear that in Jesus there is the total absence of death. And so anyone who is attached to him can know that death, darkness, and emptiness does not have the final word because the darkness has not overcome this life that is Jesus. And this same Jesus is the one who looked at darkness and chaos face to face and in a moment brought out life and light without as much as breaking a sweat. What you and I need is a life that a world of death cannot snuff out, and that life is Jesus. But where have you this morning been trying to find life outside of Jesus? Because we all do it. It's not like if you're a Christian in the room and you're looking around being like, that's a non-believer. Oh, it's all those people. They're looking for life elsewhere. Are you kidding? I do it all the time. As your pastor, I look for life outside of Jesus all the time. And validation, and acceptance and approval. Sometimes I really care way too much about what y'all think about me. Because deep down inside, there's a little boy that's craving attention and affection and approval. And I'm looking for some of y'all to meet that need. And maybe you can relate. But Jesus says, no, you don't need to do that. This reminds me of a scene later in the Gospel of John. Jesus is having a conversation with one of his disciples, a man named Peter. You may know him. He's one of the disciples. And Jesus has just shared some really tough teachings, and people start leaving Jesus in droves. And as people are walking away, Jesus looks at Peter and asks him, will you leave me too? Now, this isn't a question of fear or desperation on Jesus' part. He's not like, oh my gosh, Peter, please don't leave me. That's not how Jesus said this. It's actually a question of reflection. He's looking at Peter and saying, listen, following me will be difficult. So do you want to leave now before it gets too hard? I can just imagine Peter just looking at Jesus. And even though Peter is known to be very quick-worded and really a hothead, I believe he took a second to look at Jesus and consider Jesus' question. Because Peter had seen up to this point that Jesus had caused the storms to cease, to heal every sickness and affliction brought before him, that Jesus could raise people from the dead, that Jesus could cast out demons. And so Peter says, do I want to leave? Where else can I go? For you have the words of eternal life. See, it is only in Jesus where any of us can find life. And if that is not a great way to end the story, it actually continues. Because this is just building up the anticipation of the gospel story that John is unfolding. Because in these beginning verses, it's not that Jesus waits for us to come to him for life, but instead what we're about to read is that Jesus first draws near to us. Look what it says here, verses 9 through 13. The true light, that is Jesus, gives light to everyone who was coming into the world. Till everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. Now, you might have noticed I skipped over verses 6 through 8, and it's not because it's not important, but it's because in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about John the Baptist, so we're just going to put that aside for a second, but we're going to continue on towards the end of this section of the prologue. Now, what is John saying here? So John is saying this true light, meaning Jesus has come into the world. He's talking about the incarnation of Jesus. He's talking about Jesus taking on flesh. Now, when we talk about the incarnation of Jesus, we typically talk about it only at Christmas. You know, little baby Jesus. In a little baby tomb, no, not that. In a little baby Jesus with little baby animals and Mary and Joseph and all these precious moments, creatures and all this little round. And, you know, it's not really that gross. It's just like this really pretty set. Like, you know, if you've ever seen a nativity set, that's how we think about the incarnation of Jesus. Like it's this cute little baby thing. But that's not what John is saying. John is painting a far different picture here. Jesus, the divine word that we just read about in verses 1 through 5, who created all things and is the very essence of life, has come into a world that is contrary to who he is. The word for world is this word cosmos. And almost every time that John uses the word cosmos, he's using it in a very negative way. For John, the cosmos is a broken, sinful, and death-filled place. So when he says the light came into the world, he's saying that the incarnation of Jesus is the story of a man named Jesus who's the source of all life, and he comes into contact with a world of death. That just as Jesus interacted with the darkness and chaos of the creation story, Jesus is coming into your story, to my story, to the human story, and interacting with the mess of our life, with the mess of humanity. Now, it sounds great, right? You would think, oh, this life is here. I live in a place of death and life has drawn near. You would think people would be excited. Like if you're ever in the hospital, no one's ever bummed out that the doctor showed up. You'd be like, finally, I've been waiting for you. But John says that Jesus came into this world that he created and the world did not recognize him. It's a little bit of play on words, a little bit of irony. His creation could not recognize their creator. It's like showing up to a surprise birthday party and not even knowing who you're expecting to walk through the door. It's really awkward. Is it? I don't know. Okay, that joke failed. Anyway, the people that John is referring to here, though, are the Gentiles, people who are not religious, because the Gentiles hadn't been told about Jesus. So they had no way of knowing who God is or what to expect when Jesus came, and so they didn't know. But to make matters worse, John says in verse 11 that his own did not receive him. Now, who is John referring to there? He's talking about the Jewish people. He's talking about the religious. He's talking about the covenant people that he made a covenant of life within the Old Testament. If there is anybody, any group of people that should have known that Jesus was among them or should have received Jesus, it would have been them, but that wasn't the case. See, when John says that the Jews did not receive him, it's actually, the word is much harsher. It means they rejected him. It means they did not want him there. It's like being invited to a dinner and being like, we don't want you here, get out. And so I want you to notice that Jesus is both rejected by the secular and the religious. Why? Why would people reject Jesus as he brings life and light to them? I'll tell you why. Why any of us would reject Jesus. It's because we think, it's because the world thinks, it's because every human out there from the beginning of time has had the thought, I know what's good for my life. I know the kind of life that would be good for me. I know what's good for me. Like, I don't need someone else to tell me what's good and bad for my life. I want to construct a life for myself. But if Jesus is God and he has authority and he is the essence of life, and if he's the one determining our life, but we want to be governing our own life, we can only do one of two things. You can either accept him as the authority of your life, or you reject him and build your own life. The irony of Jesus, or the thing that blows my mind when you read the story of Jesus, is that for some people, Jesus was too grace-filled. And for some others, Jesus was too strict. Like when Jesus taught that the first shall be last and the last shall be first, the Gentiles thought, that's stupid. Like there's no reason to that. Like humility is not a virtue. So why would we ever accept that? And then when Jesus sat with sinners and prostitutes and tax collectors, the religious people hated that. They were unwilling to receive a Savior that would go to people who they believed were beneath them. I just want you to know that many of us in this room, including Christians, reject Jesus because we think that his ways will diminish our lives. But really, rejection of Jesus is death. Now, it feels quite morbid. But the story doesn't end there. Verse 12, he says, yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. So some people do receive Jesus, and if you receive Jesus, you become a child of God. What does it mean to be a child of God? It means that sin, here, I just want you to hear this morning. Okay? If you're a Christian and you are a child of God, this is what this means for you. And if you're not a Christian and you're wondering, why would I want to be a child of God? Hear this. Being a child of God means that sin, death, and darkness and brokenness no longer have power over you. It means that every past regret and mistake you've made has been forgiven. It means you can get to join in life with God in completeness. It means you have endless hope, even in the face of death and suffering. This is the life you and I actually crave. To be a child of God actually means to be fully alive. And what Jesus came to do was to give life to dead people. He was coming to do what he did in Genesis 1. This was the purpose of Jesus' incarnation. Instead of just speaking things into existence, Jesus came in person and confronted the darkness of this life so that anyone who would put their faith in Jesus and surrender their lives to him would actually receive new life. Now look at how John ends this. Look at how he describes this new life you can have in Jesus. Children born, not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. This is a life that is not fixated or fixed on your efforts, on your measurement, on your ability, on your goodness. It's a life that is born by whom? God. And if it's from God, who's going to maintain it? God. And if who's going to sustain it? God. And because Jesus is the Word, the creative power that does this, who ultimately holds your life together? Jesus. This is the heart of the gospel. New life through Jesus. Jesus came to give life not to those who've earned it or deserved it, but to the very people who are broken and jacked up, a.k.a. all of us. This is why we follow Jesus. It's because he came for us so that we would become children of God and receive new life. And I'm here to remind you this morning, Christian, that the new life of Jesus is not a one-time event. Jesus is pouring new life into you every moment of your life. Jesus is saving you even as you sit here. He's saving you all the time. We need, as a community, to recognize how much we actually need Jesus. It's not like we needed Jesus before when life was dark and hard. Life is still dark and hard. So I don't need Jesus to save me once. I need Jesus to be saving me all the time. We are in need of the grace and mercy of Jesus just as much as the first day we believed. So who is this Jesus, King's Cross? Jesus is the divine author of new life. And let me just tell you that this new life that Jesus offers you cannot be outdone or undone by anything you do in this life. Jesus says in John chapter 10, verse 28, speaking of his children that have his new life, he goes, I give them eternal life and they shall never perish. Look at these words that Jesus says. No one will snatch them out of my hand. Do you know how safe you can be in the hands of Christ, your King? Everywhere else, I've said it before, but I'll keep saying it again. Everywhere else in this world, you are measured and graded by how well you do. The moment you can't measure up, toss you aside and find the next best thing. But the life that Jesus offers is measured not by you, but by what he has done for you. I love what St. Augustine wrote, one of the early church fathers thousands of years ago. The maker of man became man, that he, ruler of the stars, might be nourished at the breast, that the bread might hunger, the fountain thirst, the light sleep, the way be wearied by the journey, that the truth might be accused by false witnesses, the judge of the living and the dead be judged by a mortal judge, that justice might be condemned by the unjust, the teacher be scourged with whips, the vine be crowned with thorns, the foundation be suspended on wood, that strength might be weakened, that he who makes well might be wounded, that life might die. Do you see what he's saying? Jesus, who is all in all, the center and source of life, took on flesh, entered a world of darkness and death, let himself be put on a cross, and died so that those who believe and receive him would have the eternal assurance that they have eternal life forever in Jesus. That life might die so that you might live. If Jesus is powerful enough to do that, he's powerful enough to maintain your life in his hands. The same hands that created the universe, that gave order to chaos, that brought life into darkness, the very hands that were pierced on a cross to give you life, is holding your life together now. And this is so freeing, church. This is so freeing because most of us are trying to make a life for ourselves that is fragile at best. Some of you just live in constant fear of what's next, or living in fear of failing or missing out. Some of you are clinging to unhealthy relationships and job situations because you believe that these things will provide you life, but all they do is drain you. And Jesus says, I am the life you've been wanting and waiting for. And if Jesus is truly God, that he's holding you firmly in his hands. And if he's holding you firmly in his hands, all of us are finally free to enjoy life in Christ instead of trying to build a life outside of him. We don't have to find validation or safety in relationships or achievements. We find our satisfaction in him alone. And so as we come to a close this morning, I just want to pose a question to you that John has posed to us. Will you believe and receive Jesus? Will you receive his new life for you today? Listen, if you're here and you're not a follower of Jesus, Jesus has drawn near to you today and is inviting you into a new life with him. A life that you don't have to build, maintain, or sustain. A life that Jesus has purchased for you so that you could move from darkness into his marvelous light. He offers you that today. And if you are a Christian here and you're a follower of Jesus, Jesus wants you to remember that his new life is always new and always working actively in your life. And so the invitation for you is, would you surrender more to him, and would you center your life on him so that you would experience more and more of the new life of Jesus, greater freedom, greater joy, greater fearlessness, and a death-filled world? Will you today receive all that he has by believing all that he said? Let's pray.